going to think back on that story or experience that you used when you chose your symbolic objects. You're going to use those symbols that you came up with last week and draw a picture about your story or your experience. But you have options on how you do this. We can look to our Renaissance artists for inspiration. Renaissance artists usually had hidden meaning in their artwork, but you could figure it out if you understood the symbols, objects, and clues that were included in the picture. For instance, this painting looks like a picture of a woman, but in Renaissance art, flowers had a very specific meaning. A pink carnation, like the one the lady in the picture is holding, is a symbol of marriage. So think about how that changes what you know about the lady and what story the picture is telling you. Before you start, you'll want to think about what kind of approach you want to take to drawing your story. If you wanted to draw your story as a still life, you would just redraw your symbols, possibly drawing them on a table or grouping them on the floor, but keeping the focus just on the objects. There wouldn't be a whole lot of other things happening in the image, but you would want to think about what objects are next to each other and what they look like. For example, in my image, don't you think that it changes the meaning of the drawing that I made my ice cream tipped over and melting? If it were upright, people looking at my drawing might have a totally different reaction to it. You could also choose one person from your story, focus on them, and draw a portrait. You'll then incorporate your symbols around them. The symbols tell your viewers about that person, who the person is, what they're like, and what they're doing. If you choose to do a portrait, you would only draw the symbols that have to do with the person you're drawing, because your drawing would be a portrait of that person, symbols and all. For example, I drew a picture of my sister and I put the butterfly outside the window. That was intentional. I'm making it so that she seems like she's longing to go outside. You could also just draw an action scene, kind of like a snapshot from that story or experience that you've been thinking about. For example, in my drawing, I decided to include my sister and her new boyfriend and surround them with butterflies. We certainly spent a lot of time outside, and my sister and her new boyfriend went on a lot of walks, but they were never actually surrounded by butterflies. But the butterfly was my symbol for the outdoors, and I also kind of feel like it could represent how my sister and her boyfriend were feeling about each other, so I put a lot of them in. There are so many different ways you can do this, but with all of them, you want to first start with your story or experience, then choose how you want to draw it, and finally, make sure to include the symbols in that drawing to help tell more about your person's story or experience.